Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Elevate podcast. Do you want to get more out of your sport? Of course you do. Well, this is what this podcast is designed to help you to do. Me and my good friend, fellow coach and PhD student Scott Finley will take a bit of science, a research paper, a theory, or something that we've stumbled across that we think is interesting and relevant and helpful for you to perform better and love your sport more. We'll break it down, explain it, and then apply it to you in a real world context. Hopefully you find the podcast helpful and that it helps you to move forward in your sport, to perform better and to love it more. There are loads more free resources available on the Elevate platform and on the YouTube site, so check the links in the description. But for now, enough chat for me. Let's go with today's podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Elevate Multisport Academy podcast. I am joined by Joel again. Joel, how are we doing this morning?
Hello, not too bad at all, Scott. Thank you. How are you?
Good. Yes, very well. Thank you. Excited for this chat. This is a topic that we've probably talked a wee bit about before. This is kind of motivation in a sense, but more specifically about your why. So this I believe began with Simon Sinek speaking about successful people thinking in a certain way. And so he called this the golden circle. And it states that knowing your why, knowing why you do something is more important than how and what you do. Thinking of that video, Joel, just this isn't one of your quickfire questions. When do you think that video was recorded?
Well, that's a good question because I don't know the answer. It was a fair while ago. The TED Talk might even be in kind of square screen format. So I'm going to say 12 years ago, Scott.
Not far off, 2009.
Oh, okay. Not too bad.
But yeah, looking at it, you can tell it's old, old footage. Anyway, on to quickfire questions. Are you ready?
I am.
Cool. Do we all need a why?
To a greater or lesser extent, yes.
Okay. Do people have different whys for different areas of their lives? Do you want me to, will I reword?
No, that's fine. I'm
Okay.
just pausing to think. It's very bad podcast etiquette, probably. I would say no.
Okay. And these sort of third personal questions are getting more and more personal. So if you don't mind, what is one of your whys that you're happy to share with your audience? Or given your recent answer, maybe you just have the one.
Okay, so we'll think about some of the questions that we can ask later to work out what our why is. But one of mine is about growth and development and sharing that with other people.
Nice, I like that. Very succinctly put.
Thanks. I thought it was a really long answer, and I thought maybe you were going to say that didn't qualify as an answer to a quick fire question. But
I mean, well, it wasn't a yes or no answer, but I think we've moved away from that quite dramatically. So
I think so. It's as succinct as I ever get, anyway.
Okay, so moving on to the discussion of the actual topic then. So let's start with the simple. What is this theory? Can you expand on my kind of very brief introduction to it?
Yeah, and I'm not going to try and shy away from the clear reference to Simon Sinek's work here. We're not trying to like masquerade this as our own ideas or anything. As you say, they've been out there since 2009, and actually it's pretty well accepted. Yesterday I played a little game where I sort of tried to have a little hunt around and Google, why Simon Sinek is wrong, that kind of thing, to see what other perspectives are out there. And actually there's very few. I do think his ideas have been taken and warped. We could come onto that later. But essentially his idea is that most, particularly businesses, but also many entities like sports clubs, they know what they do, right? So he always talks Microsoft, they know they build computers, right? And that's where they kind of work from. And sports teams know what they do. They play sport. Again, most teams then know how they do that thing and how they do it successfully, what their USP is, what their identity is, how they play the game, or how they go about training. His position is that very, very few people know the why. Why do they do what they do in the way that they do it? and that people just haven't peeled back the layers of the onion to get to that enough. And his proposition is that if they did, then that would help them do the how and the what better. And that people would buy into that more, because it's not just, you're not just buying into a product, you're buying into a greater, deeper philosophy, probably something that connects us on a sort of more deeply human level, more than we do. And knowing some of his work, I think I arrived a fair few years ago at something very similar. In fact, I probably arrived at it myself and then discovered his work. And in sport, I've used the term motivation rather than why a little bit more.
Mm.
But I think as sports people, we very rarely jump straight in. Our starting point is very rarely what is our motivation or what is our why. And I think that if we did that, just like Simon Sinek suggests, we might end up doing our sport better, and we might end up enjoying our sport more, and we might end up molding our sporting experience around who we are more effectively so that it's more fulfilling.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, so that dives straight into the next point, which was why this is important. So you've kind of given some examples there of why it's important in that sporting context. Um, what about from a general life point of view? Do you think that, say you've got a why for why you do your sport and why you want to take part in that sport, can or how can that benefit on your general life?
Well, I think if we know why we're doing our sport, if we have a really deep sense of why we're doing it, then it becomes, we structure a sporting concept that is right for us. And therefore, that whole thing becomes more life affirming. We've talked in previous podcasts about a harmonious relationship with our sport. And I
Mm.
think if we work from a position of why, so we structure our sport in a way that is built around us, we have a harmonious relationship with it. And therefore, that part of our life is harmonious. Therefore, our whole life is going to be a little bit more harmonious. I also think that if we do this in sport, then we naturally do it in life a little bit more as well. And we end up again making decisions about our life, how we live and what we do and how we spend our time in a way that's more in tune with who we are at a very deep level. And I think that that can give us a sense of, I'm going to come back to the word again, like harmony within our life. The other thing is that any time we try and do anything in life, we're basically dealing with change, either at a very small level, um, just on a day-to-day basis, or maybe on a really big level when we think about big life goals. And I think, again, most people's theory of change, or most people don't have a theory of change. They
Mm.
just try and do stuff in a really kind of scattery way. And I think, again, if we can start with these motivations, then we know the ways in which, or the things that we should strive to change towards, and also some of the ways to change so that we might achieve them. That makes sense in my head, but I don't know whether it comes out making any sense. Does it?
No, I think it does. I think you're fine.
Hi everyone, me again. Sorry to interrupt, but just 20 seconds to remind you to check out the links in the description to the free resources that are on the YouTube site and also on the Elevate Multisport platform. It's free to sign up. There's free content, and if you want, paid courses that can help you to elevate your sport, to perform better and love it more. Let's get back to the conversation.
I think the previous couple of questions have assumed that people know their why.
Mm-hmm.
What if people don't? What are some kind of key questions that people could ask themselves to
Okay,
help
great.
find their whys?
I'm going to give 3. So this is like audience participation time. So if anyone is listening, please just pick one of these questions. So I'm gonna do 2 that Simon Sinek uses and then a different one. The one that he goes to quite a lot is this idea of go to your best friend and ask them why are we friends, and they won't be able to answer the question because the why word taps into our emotion, and it's very difficult for us to articulate emotions. So they'll flounder around for a while, and then you have to say, okay, so what is it about me that means that you would be there for me no matter what? And again, they'll kind of flounder, but in the end they'll start to explain the bits about you as a person that mean something to them, the bits about you that fill a little gap in their life. And those will be some of the things that you bring to the world, and they'll be based on your deepest kind of why, your motivations, who you are, what you bring to the world. And so, and that might be, but you're really joyful. You always bring a positivity. Okay, great. So my why is something, my motivations are something to do with joy, positivity. Okay, so I'm a sports person. How do I make my sporting experience joyful, positive? Then I'm living in line with my why. Second question Simon Sinek uses, but not very often, is describe your best day at work, or describe your best day in sport, or describe your best day in any particular context. You could probably just ask it for like a whole life thing. Describe your best day, and then what was specific? What was specifically brilliant about that day? Why did you pick that day and not any others? So as I asked that question, referring to one of my previous answers, I think about a day when I was working for the nutrition company Cliff Bar, and I'd been called to the London Marathon Expo. So there were thousands of people coming through the doors every day, and every day I had 3 or 4 slots where I stood up on the stage and I got to just communicate some simple stuff about marathon nutrition. I knew the subject. I felt really proficient. There was like a lot of people listening to every single, kind of talk that I did, because there was the through flow of people was so great. And I just
Mm.
thought, this is fantastic. With some simple information, I'm actually hopefully helping the people in front of me. And so I'd love to do more of that, and hence us, starting to record these podcasts and me creating Elevate as a company. Third question: divide your life into chapters. You can divide them into any chapters you like. It might be primary school, then secondary school, then university. There are no rules. Your answer is your answer. Then in each chapter, think of the top few memories that just jump out to you. And then when you've done that, potentially for your whole life, look at the theme across each of those memories, and they will be connected by something. There will be themes, like they were always with family or teams or groups of people, or they were always something to do with travel, or they were something to do with, do you know what I mean? There'll be a
Mm-hmm.
theme. And when you find that theme, that will describe part of your why, part of who you are, and part of your motivations for what you do, the bits that connect with the deepest parts of you. And then when you know that, you can make decisions about your sporting life or your life in general based on those things, and they will connect with you at a really deep level.
I was partially trying to answer those questions in my head, as well as listen and think of what I was going to say next as well.
Where did you get to?
Probably.
Where did you get to? What were your answers?
Well, so when you were talking about the second one, it made me think of that thing of what would you do? I think it's maybe on an advert recently. What would you do if money was no
Mm.
object? You
Hmm.
know, what is your thing that you would do even if you didn't need to do it for money?
Hmm.
And that's the answer to that is a bit of a what, what would you do? But it is probably some way to helping you describe your why, because um, maybe the reason you would do it is because of what's driving you.
Mm.
Um,
Where would you end up, Scott? What would you
I,
do?
I've thought about this before actually. I think I would still end up in the same place. Although I'm doing my PhD just now, I'd maybe jump ahead and just sort of self-fund my own self-fund my own research.
Okay.
Um, but I think I'm on the right track.
Mm. Great. And that's really affirming, right?
Yeah.
So even if people feel very, um, like I guess if people feel a very harmonious relationship with their work and their life and their sporting endeavors, then the chances are that you almost don't need this. You don't need to go back to it. It might not elicit a huge change, but it's a great way
Hmm.
to fact check where you are and what you're doing and the decisions that you're making. Um, and interestingly, I do something very similar to that with some schools that I've been into. So I'll say, like, wherever the entrance to the sports hall is, or the hall that we're in, I say this door is now, it's a portal, and you are now allowed to walk through the portal. It will take you anywhere. It will take you into any career, or it will take you to any place. You can nuance the question, and then get some ideas from the kids as to where they'll go and what they're going to be
Where,
doing,
yeah.
and then that helps them. Okay, So then you can ask the why question. Okay, why there? Why specifically there? Why not
Yeah.
somewhere else? And I've done it with kids, but you could do that with businesses. You could do it with athletes. You could do it with
Mhm.
anyone. And I think your example there is just, it's another question that people can ask that gets them down to that deepest level of themselves.
Yeah, there's going to be different examples that work for
Hmm.
different people. So it's good that
Yep.
we've got a range there. Um, we've kind of talked about this already. You gave a couple of examples. Within a sporting context,
Hmm.
maybe how does your why fit in generally with being an athlete? What are some of the benefits of having your why? Um, what are some of the ways that you can use it?
Okay, great. This is where the rubber hits the road for me in a sporting context because sports people generally will jump straight to their goal setting. And I think that that's pretty well accepted. Most people will have a fair idea of what they're working towards, even if they've never actually put it down on paper. And as a side note, putting stuff down on paper is like a really good idea. So you always want to write these things down because it solidifies them so much more. If people have looked at Elevate as a platform, and if they've looked at the chapters or the modules of the race blueprint course, they'll see that the first lesson is motivation. It's why. And that comes before the goal setting for a very, very specific reason. And that is that if we just pick a goal without doing this bit first, we are literally just plucking something out of the air. It's just going, I think I'll go that way. Based on what? Based on nothing. Or maybe based on what your friends are doing, what your club mates are doing, what you feel like you should do, what you ought to do. And we always need to be careful of shoulds and oughts. So what this does is goes, who are you first? What is it about the sport that you love? I ask those deeper questions so that then when you pick the goal, it's in tune with you. And so it will be therefore more motivating. And therefore you're more likely to succeed in it. And even if you don't succeed at the goal, even the process will be more fulfilling. And so sport will be an enriching experience.
And I think an important point to that as well is, maybe some people are sitting listening going, um, but no, that's not true because I set my goals all the time, and and they are in tune with what I want to do. And my answer to that is that in that case, you've maybe got a more subconscious understanding of your why than you know,
Hmm.
or maybe you do know. In which case, that's great. You can jump to the goal setting
Hmm.
because you understand it. You understand what you want to get out of your sporting life. Um, but yeah, I think it's important just to flag that up because, as I say, people will probably be able to set goals without having first done all these questions.
Yeah.
Um, but I think they've got that. They've probably got that why.
Yeah, I've talked about my Ironman or Iron Distance experience before, and just the fact that I did that and I trained really hard for it, and I spent a year doing it because I was bored of being asked the question, "Have you ever done an Ironman event or an Iron
Yeah,
Distance event?" And I didn't love it at all. I didn't love the year. I didn't love the experience. I just wanted it all to be over because I'd never asked the question about, what is it that I love about triathlon and about sport, and for me, the why about sport is keeping fit. It's about growth. It's about development. It's about pushing myself, being a bit on the edge physically in
hmm
races. It's not about endurance or suffering or how much pain I can handle or being out there for a really long day or anything of those things that maybe fall in line with the more ultra endurance end of the sport. And so, yeah, so I really struggled with it because I hadn't done this bit of the process. And that was a long time ago. Now it was sort of 13 years ago. So,
adding to your list of ors, or from an not suggesting you've got a massive ego, from an egotistical point of view, being able to say, "Oh, I've done an Ironman" when people ask,
mm,
because that's a big one. As you said, people do think longer and harder is better, and
mhm.
therefore I must go longer. I must do an Ironman. I must do an ultramarathon. But not if you don't want to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, whoever made up the rules that longer was better.
Yeah,
Not
but
sure
but
it is.
and it's well, no, exactly. It's again back to the questions. It's different things are going to be suitable for different people.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Speaking about motivation again, so we talked about habits a couple of weeks ago, or the last couple of episodes,
Hmm.
and we talked about how maybe your goals and your motivations come as a result of, oh sorry, habits are developed as a result of your motivation and your goals,
Hmm.
and how we want that motivation maybe to move from extrinsic to intrinsic.
Hmm.
Um, do you think your why could ever be sort of extrinsic? Is it always going to be an intrinsic thing?
Well, do you know what? That's a really interesting question because it might be. I, I'm just going to think out loud. It might be extrinsic in the fact that it might be about sharing experiences with other people.
Hmm.
And as I think about that example, I don't know if that's intrinsic or extrinsic because there's an extrinsic factor in that it's other people and it's community. Um, but it's intrinsic in the fact that it matters to me on a kind of
Hmm.
deeper level. I think that if people were challenged with this question of, if you could go back to, one experience from childhood, or what was your best day at work, or, what are the themes across the chapters of your life? If people genuinely and honestly do that, I would be enormously surprised. And I've never experienced anyone do this and come out and gone, it was payday,
Yeah.
or it was the day I got the new trainers. And so, therefore, I don't think people are going to arrive at a completely extrinsic
Hmm.
um, answer. If they did, then my immediate question would be, okay, why did the paycheck matter? What was it about that pair of trainers that made that day so special? And then I think ultimately you would end up getting down to a level that was very intrinsic, some
Hmm.
deep part of you that wasn't about those extrinsic factors. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think so. And with a possible, example in this case of, or maybe the paycheck is um, about being seen as successful,
Hmm.
and it's about wanting to be seen as successful. That's their why. They've got this ego driving them that wants them to be seen as successful or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, no, I think so. I agree. And again, as with some of the stuff we've discussed, realistically, it doesn't matter too much. This is us kind of discussing the technicalities of it from from an interest point of view, and
Hmm.
hopefully people are getting something out of it. Um, I think yeah, the key part is obviously finding that why, and yeah, and maybe if you do drill down and find that it's something more extrinsic, then dig deeper. I think is what you're saying there, maybe.
Yeah, well, I think so. Our notion, as far as I understand it, and some psychologists might correct me, but our notion of stuff being of value doesn't actually form until we're earliest 7 or 8, but maybe later in life than that. And I think if people were to go back and go pick a moment from childhood, a lot of people would go earlier than that. And
Hmm.
therefore it wouldn't be based on stuff. It would be based on that amazing day I had with my family, or um, something else again that's not necessarily to do with stuff. So
Yeah.
I would challenge people to keep asking that question, why it was important. And this is something that I talk about in the 6 keys course as well, that people can go onto. It's completely free. Have a little look. And this is like the 5 whys. So again, we can link that model of 5 whys, ask why, to get to the root of something. We can do that within the context of this find your why question. So, answer the question, and that might be it. But also, okay, why was that important?
Hmm.
Okay, but why specifically that? And try and get down those levels of why until you kind of get to a base level. I think drilling down here is really important. One of the things I notice about when Simon Sinek speaks about this is his use of the word specific, or specifically. What was it
Hmm.
specifically about that? He really makes people go into the detail of the particular moment or memory that they pick out. So it's worth spending a bit of time with this. And it's also worth spending a bit of time with this because you asked, one of your quickfire questions was about, can we have different whys? You know, if we spend a bit of time with this and we find our why, we don't have to redo this every year. And it won't shift or change because it will be something deeply formational in us.
Mm.
So spending 15 minutes with this to get an answer is something that might equip you and be useful for the whole of the rest of your life.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. So let's take it again. So we've got our whys.
Mm-hmm.
We know that's important. Let's get into how we can use that. So even more specifically, digging in even deeper as well. Let's think you're in a race. You're battling with the person beside you, and you're struggling, and you know, it's very easy to tell yourself in that moment that it doesn't matter. You know, get in your head, one extra position doesn't matter. I've missed my time anyway. How can we use our why in this situation? And as a follow up, what if it's not relevant to
What if the
that?
why isn't relevant?
Yeah, yeah, or you know, if it's about inspiring your children, you want to do sport to inspire your children or something like that, and you know the children aren't there. How can we use it, and what if the why is not relevant to that specific sporting context? Sorry, it's a difficult question.
Uh, that's absolutely fine. I presume we're going to see the children again after the race.
Yes, we will.
So we're going to tell them the story and we're going to
Yeah.
show them photos and we're going to recount the events and they're going to know that, mom or dad went away and did this thing and we can leverage it and use it to help inspire them and motivate them in that kind of a way. I think if again, I'm completely hypothesizing, but if an athlete found themselves in a situation where they could not link what they were doing within that sporting experience to their why, they're probably in the wrong sporting experience. And it's worthwhile coming back to, well, what does that mean? Do I give up triathlon for tennis, or football or a team sport?
Hmm.
Because I've got sucked into this individual sport thing. And actually, what I love is family. What I love is, sharing experience with people, and I don't do that. So, okay, join a club or change sports. I think for me, that would be a useful experience. And we always want to try and find the positive in these things because it's a little flag that goes, hang on a minute, something's wrong here. What's wrong?
Hmm.
Why is there a disassociation between where I am and my why at a deepest level and my motivation at a deepest level? And then answer those questions. And that will probably help you to change course in a way that's useful. This is what we said earlier on, and move towards a version of life and sport that is more harmonious with who you are.
Yeah. No, that's nice. I like that. I think the key point though is if you know, we're not saying change sport if you're struggling with motivation,
Mhm.
only if you can't make that connection. You know, so if you find yourself in your head during a race saying, "Oh, I should just quit because I'm tired and I've missed my missed my time point,"
Mhm.
you know, that's not a sign that you need to change sports. It was that specific point about if you can't attach your why to your sporting context. So
Mhm.
I thought I'd just clarify that as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Go on.
you mentioned teams and footballs and you know football teams and stuff like that. There, how do you think the why extends into a team or community setting, if at all?
Yeah, well, I think that you can answer this individually, but I think that teams can answer it together collectively. I also think that leaders of teams should understand this first. So I think this connects to leadership theory quite well, and we don't have a lot of time to go into this. Maybe this is another future podcast, but leaders, and so in a sports context, I'm now thinking about coaches should understand their why because that will be the basis of their coaching philosophy, the way they run their sessions,
Mm.
the way that they communicate with athletes, the way that they run their club or their squad. I mean, for professional coaches, I think that this is tremendously important because, Scott, again, we've talked about understanding why or motivation, use whichever word you like, to inform goal setting. But actually, at a leadership level and at a coaching level, we want to use the understanding of motivation to inform the strategy that we actually employ. So the vision, the goals, the strategy of how to get there, and then the tactics that we employ to fulfill the vision and strategy as well. So I think this is key for leaders to understand, and that will then inform how they manage those teams, run those squads, how they coach that group of athletes towards the collective goal.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess, circling back to what we're primarily about, which is endurance sport,
Mhm.
um, do you think that's just a straight copy across? Is it in terms of key takeaways for people in endurance sport and goal setting and the use of the why?
Key takeaways at the end of all of this is I think that if you are setting a goal, if you're doing goal setting, and we're recording this at an interesting time in the season because it's end of October, so it's the sort of end of the season for some people. It's beginning of the season for other people, who might. But a lot of people will be thinking, okay, what's the next year about? What do we want to start working towards? And the first thing that they will often write is, okay, so what's my goal for
Mhm.
next year, for next season, or for whatever the next phase is? And I think that the important takeaway is, well, you should ask some of these questions about motivation first, because or else, as I said before, we're just picking a goal out of the air, basically.
Mhm.
So I think the application is really that this is a powerful strategy for athletes and coaches to be able to form a season and a sporting experience around themselves. And if they're not doing this before they're doing the goal setting and the vision part of their planning, my take would be that their vision setting isn't going to be as accurate or as effective or as motivating as it could be.
Okay. No, that sounds good. And I think you've kind of given some great key takeaways there for with regards to goal setting. Um, Maybe as a final finish up, have you got any other takeaways more broadly speaking about why, and or maybe some suggested reading for listeners if people are interested in learning more?
Yeah, fine. I'm going to give suggested reading back to you in a second. One of the other things that we can do, again, a potential future podcast, is as athletes. So I think that there are two things that we do before goal setting or vision setting or whatever that thing is, before you
Mhm.
pick your aim. And one of them is find your why, and the other one is understand your values. And I think whilst those two things probably give you slightly different answers, they allow you to understand two parts of you at a very deep level, in a way that helps again you to inform those decisions and the way that you change effectively. So understanding values can be done in a lot of different ways. My favorite way is another question, someone that you can play with. So anyone who's listening can play with this. Someone gives a speech at the end of your career, at the end of your life, pick a point in the future, and they say a whole load of stuff about you. Who did you pick to make the speech, and what did they say? And who you picked is probably someone who reflects your values. And what did they say will be what you aspire to be or who you aspire to
Mm.
become. So they are the values that are deeply important to you. And the question then is, okay, so how do those values layer over my sporting experience, and how do they relate to my why? So for me, another takeaway is it doesn't even just stop at this why stuff. I think it's about understanding values too. Then once someone has done that, they are then ready to jump into goal setting.
Nice. Okay. And you said you'd bounce suggested reading back to me, so
Yes.
I will just give the obvious ones. I think for so get on YouTube, and this is suggested watching rather than reading to start with. I would watch Simon Sinek's Start with Why TED Talk if you've not already. Um, he's got a book called Start with Why, and also a follow up called Find Your Why. So um, yeah, I think those, given that it's his topic and his theory, I think he's probably the expert to go to for further reading.
Mhm.
Anything else to say before we finish up, Joel?
Yeah, only a thought that I had yesterday when I was researching this topic. It wasn't something that I come across anywhere else. And there are a few people that disagree with this philosophy, and they just go, like, who cares about why? No one buys Coke because of why. They buy what? They buy the product. And I think my comeback would be that this stuff might sound woolly and philosophical, and actually the sports people, it's about the sport, or in business, it's about the product.
Mm.
My contention, or my philosophy, is that this stuff, if you look at a wall, what is a wall made of? Most people will answer bricks, stones, rocks, those kind of things. I think that this find your why stuff is like the mortar. The mortar in a wall is just as important, if not more important, because without it, everything falls apart. All the what's fall apart, all the stuff falls apart. The bricks, the stones, the rocks tumble to the ground if they're not held together by the mortar. But most people don't see that when they look at a wall. They see the bricks, they see the stuff. And I think that this is like the mortar of life, really. I think understanding it holds everything else together. So it might be subtle, you might not see it, but I think it's really important.
Nice. That's a great point to finish on. So thank you very much for your time today, Joel. Thank you for listening, and yeah, we'll see all you guys again next time.
See you soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. We hope you found that podcast really useful, and if you did, then it's just a sample of the information that's available across the Elevate platform. Where we want to drive you towards is the Team Elevate community pages. If you're enrolled on any one of the courses across the Elevate platform, you can sign up. And if you do, then it's the place where individuals like you can come together to grow, share ideas, ask questions, interact with us, and be the first to hear about upcoming courses and exclusive offers. So if you haven't signed up, sign up to Team Elevate now, and we hope to see you there soon.